For 6 years, South Korea was my home. South Korea was the place that I lived, I worked, and I generally thought I'd prosper. However, over the last few years, it became quite difficult and challenging. We had COVID, which really locked us down for a number of years. I got to a point where I wasn't happy in South Korea working and living. I broke up in a recent relationship, and I wondered what was next for Michael. For years, I had rose-tinted glasses on in this country, especially in Seoul, a city I loved so much. I was Mr. Seoul Leland, I was Mr. Work Hard, I was Mr. Getting Everything Right. But then all of a sudden, I started to get everything wrong. My passion for watching Seoul stopped. My passion for climbing mountains stopped. I just wanted to stay in the house all day, watch YouTube, and pass away the time. I knew something had to change. The initial plan was quite simple. Have a mini break here, have a mini break there, have a few weeks off work once my contract finished, and just generally try to enjoy life. But as most things in life, it didn't exactly work out that way. As you'll see, I start off in the Philippines, and then I go to Vietnam twice. As the months progressed between January and July, I felt the urge to leave this country grow more and more and more, to the point where I decided I need to take time off. So here was the new plan. I would spend Lunar New Year in the Philippines. I would spend a 3-day weekend at the start and at the end of May in Vietnam. After that, I will move on to the United States. There in the United States, I will go to Houston, New York, and then Philadelphia. Come back to Seoul and rest for a week, and then it was leg 2 of my big journey. I was going to start in Cambodia, a few days there before moving into Thailand. After a few days in Thailand, I moved to Laos for 5 days. Then back to Thailand for a loop around the country to enjoy everything that Thailand had to offer. Once that adventure ended, I went back to Seoul for 5 weeks, a time I expected to climb mountains or ride bikes and generally try to be a tourist. But after 6 years living in this country, all I did was sit at home, drink beer and watch YouTube, and I regret absolutely nothing. Once that little stint was over, it was back to Manchester for a wedding. I went there and I felt totally relaxed. Came back to Seoul for 1 week, and then it was another little trip to Thailand, because why not squander all my money at the same time? After my third and final time in Thailand was up, it was back into a cold, wet and almost snowy Seoul. Spend 1 more month there, Michael, get your apartment in order to give to somebody else, and then it was back to Manchester. Please join me, guys, as you see my year, 2023. On a freezing cold Friday night, I run to Incheon Airport after work. Arrived just as the flight was boarding. After a few pints on the plane, I arrived in the Philippines. Little did I know that this was going to be the start of the greatest adventure of my life. I spent the time in the Philippines going around and exploring this beautiful, beautiful country. I went from -17 degrees to 24 degrees, and I absolutely loved it. Don't get me wrong, there was a few beers drank along the way, as you can see right now, but if I knew then what I knew now, then maybe something a little bit stronger would have been drank on that vacation. I was an English teacher in South Korea, and I was an English teacher there for 6 years, as stated earlier. And one thing you need to know about being an English teacher in Korea is you do not get time off. So, when a 3-day weekend popped up on our systems, I knew I had to get out of here. So, it was a cheap flight over to Hanoi. I spent the time wandering the streets of Hanoi. I went on a bike for the first time ever. I got scammed in a hotel and managed to get my comeuppance by raiding their minibar just as I left. It was full of frills and spills, and it was a really cracking time. This was really one of the highlights of the year for me, and it was only just a 3-day weekend. Some people call me crazy for going a 5-hour flight just for 3 days, but literally nothing in life should be taken for granted, and if you can do it, go ahead and do it. It's just about 3-4 weeks later and we make our trip back again, but this time I've got company. My friend Joe joins me on the adventure this time. I go around and I do all the touristy things that I did last time, but this time I had a slight little edge to it. The weather was absolutely roasting, and it was good to finally travel not alone and have a buddy with me. Now because of that, it did mean that a few more beers may have been drank, maybe 1 or 2 too many, but it was still an amazing adventure. If you can see here, we weren't really very lucky with the weather, as it did rain a few times throughout the few days we were there. We made some friends with people at the bar, and even the barmaids came over to say hello to us. We were like the coolest kids in the room, you could say. But after going around Hanoi for the 4th time now, I believed I was a bit of an expert of the city. Lo and behold, I got us lost a few times. But hey ho, isn't that the whole point of adventuring? Okay, this is the big one. Work is now finished and I'm starting the real adventure. So the plan was, as I said earlier, Houston, Philadelphia, New York. I went to meet my buddy Antonio, who I used to work with for many years in South Korea, and if you can see, my mother and my father joined me on this leg of the journey. Now I have thousands of photos from this event, but I've been to so many countries this year, I'm going to run out of time. So here's a selected few of my favourite photos we took whilst we were there. It was fantastic. We went to the Kennedy Space Station. I spent 4th of July there. We saw many different tourist attractions. The weather was absolutely boiling too, which I don't think my mum and dad were too happy about. But I got to live the American dream, and I felt southern comfort whilst I was there. I really enjoyed the food, and the most important thing, the most amazing thing for me was spending the 4th of July in the United States, and not only in the United States, in Texas. We listened to a George Strait tribute act, and that just ticked every single box that I ever wanted. It was one of the best days of the year. But I couldn't just stay in Houston. I had to move on, and the next trip was New York. New York City. It was finally great to be back after 10 years. So me, my mother and my father all made the journey from Houston to New York. But that wasn't the only one who came to see us. My sister Roisin and her boyfriend Sam also came for the adventure. It was a really amazing time, and we were just pure tourists for the whole time we were there. Once again, the food was absolutely amazing, and after a few pints of Guinness, it was really much needed, those dollar slice pizzas. This was really an amazing trip. It really gave me an idea of wanting to travel more and more. Literally because I made that trip from Houston to New York, it means that I've actually now done a circumference of the entire planet. So that's another little thing I could tick off my list. I was going to leave you here now and have a watch of some of these photos before I make my trip to Philadelphia. Philadelphia. I've been wanting to come here for years, and for one reason and one reason only. And it wasn't just a Philly cheesesteak that I wanted. I wanted to watch my baseball team, the Philadelphia Phillies. I managed to go and see them beat the San Diego Padres, and it was a really amazing day out. But that day soon ended, and I was back in New York for the last few pints of the trip, and then finally, my trip back to Seoul. Get ready for leg 2. Well, next on the cards was Cambodia, and this was the start of my 1 month in Southeast Asia. For some reason, I decided to just arrive on a dry day, so cups of coffee, more like cups of beer.
We went to Phnom Penh, the capital of the country, and Siem Reap. When Phnom Penh was more of an educational city, learning about the history and the past of the poor country. We then moved on to Angkor Wat in Siem Reap, and that was truly a wonder to behold. A seventh wonder of the ancient world. I could not believe I had the opportunity to go and see that. As you can see from the photos, I wore my best outfit whilst I was there. Now, after a few days transit in Bangkok, it was time to go to Laos. Now, Laos actually was not on the agenda. It was a last-minute decision. I started off in the capital of Vientiane and then moved on to Vang Vieng. It was so nice just to be in the jungle for a couple of days, and it was really, truly blissful. It was such a beautiful thing to get away from the bustling lights of Bangkok and the busy streets of Seoul to be in the complete middle of nowhere. After one more day in Vientiane, the capital, it was time to move on to Thailand. Thailand was a solo trip. Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Hua Hin, Koh Tao, Phuket, Udon Thani. As you can see, I spent most of the month alone, but the selfies show you it was incredible. I went from high to low to hot to hotter to rain to shine, all elements. I knew this is the place I wanted to move to. But I could not stay in Southeast Asia forever, and I had to get back to Manchester. And I had to get back to Manchester for a very special reason. It was Josh Gary's wedding, and he only gave me 3 years advance notice to be there, so I kind of had to make the journey. So I managed to get a couple of United games in there, 1 win, 1 loss, but it was fantastic to be back under the floodlights and eat fantastic food. Uzamlı Turkish kebab. I did everything on this trip. I went hiking. I had my niece's 3rd birthday party. It was an incredible trip. But soon I had to get back to Seoul for my last hurrah of the year. Now, this should have been Philippines Part 2. However, since moving back from Thailand and the space of being in Seoul and Manchester, I decided that Thailand was going to be the next destination to live. So I decided, why not go to the place where you're going to move to? And I spent 2 relaxing weeks trying to live like a local or live like someone who lived in Thailand. I think I did well, and it was a sign of things to come for 2024. Bring it on, I say. The last few weeks are truly now upon us. It was some task trying to put 6.5 years into nothing more than 2 big suitcases and a cabin-sized bag. The stress of sorting the apartment kind of got to me, as you can see here. But then it was over, and the last few weeks brought many friends to say goodbye. I got a last few football games in. I even got a mountain to be hiked. It was truly an amazing last few weeks in Seoul, and it made me realise why I lived here in the first place. But this is it. Time to move on. For the last 6.5 years, Seoul's my home. I have many, many memories. Many good, many bad, but mostly happy, great memories. I'll never forget the people I met here, the moments I shared with people, the opportunities that I had. They were all fantastic. So, the Philippines, Vietnam, the USA, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, the UK. It was some year, some memorable year I remember for a very long time. And as for Korea, well, I guess this is so long, but it certainly isn't goodbye. I'll see you soon.